Hello, Simone. I'm excited to be here with you today. Today, we are going to be talking about men crying and women leaving them, or men going to women for emotional support and then women getting the ick. This has been an ongoing trend as like a meme that goes around every now and then within the red pill diaspora or even the original red pill or MGTOW community back in the day. And
Mhm.
somebody would be like, well, X girl said she wanted me to open up to her emotionally, or she wanted me to be vulnerable around her. Or a girl will say something like, "Well, why don't men ever like show their emotions or cry or whatever, right?" And then men are always like, "Well, because I tried that once and the woman never talked to me again or forced me or like, you know,
Mm,
over and over and over again you see these stories."
okay.
And so, I understand why these go viral is in the red pill community. Like my brain sees this and the first thought it has is that's so unfair.
I'm just
So,
picturing Greta Thunberg saying, "How dare
how
you?
dare you say this is what you want?
I tried, and then what did you do? You left me." It also
Um,
it seems kinda fake to me, though, so I'm keen
what
to
do you
hear
mean
more.
fake? Do you not think it really happens? I'm
So
sure
men
it happens.
express themselves extremely flamboyantly all the time, online and in person. Like, I've never felt like men are withholding their emotions. I feel like what's actually happening here is women signaling, maybe because they're seeing a therapist or something, that they expect a certain type of emotional vulnerability from their male partners. Like, remember how you were walking behind those elite people at that one conference we went to?
Yeah.
And they were like, "I would never date someone who wasn't seeing a therapist." It could be that their therapists are kind of giving
All
them this
women, by the
language,
way, who are
and
saying
then and so they're then communicating to their boyfriends like, "Well, you have to be therapy speak insert." And then the men attempt to, in a very fake and contrived way, open up and break down, and I mean, obviously, they look like idiots because they don't actually that's not how they feel, and
that
then
might actually be a component of it. I'm not
yeah,
gonna lie. I might feel like part of it because when I started like investigating my own experiences around this, right?
yeah.
Like the first thing I think is how dare women be that,
Yeah,
callous and
that seems
representative.
crazy.
But
Yeah.
then first thought is these women don't know that they don't want a guy to do this. Like, they're not trying to trick their boyfriends into crying in front of them or something. They
No.
genuinely think that this is what they want because this is what they've been told what they want. They're not
Well,
being
yeah,
it
and what they've been told and by whom exactly? Because this isn't stuff that shows up, for example, in fantasy romance novels. Men opening up in a way where they become emotionally vulnerable by crying does not happen in romance novels, to
which are
be
way
very clear.
important, by the way.
Which is yeah, which is yeah, this is what women actually want.
The monster effer section of the library.
Doesn't show up in that. Well, no, even, like, when I was younger, I loved historical
Okay.
romance. So, like, not that's not there were no monsters, it was just always noblemen because they had to have money, you have to
But then I started to think about, before I dated Simone, and I was like, well, because another thing that I thought when I heard this is I don't remember having this problem. I don't remember any girl ever leaving me because I opened myself up emotionally to her, and I
yeah,
never intentionally tried to emotionally guard myself when I was dating, and I
no.
dated a lot.
You were
A lot, a
extremely
lot, a lot.
transparent, like, from moment number 1, so I think you also edited out anyone
But I'm also from the perspective of a lot of guys, whether they say simpy or effeminate or whatever word they wanna use, I do not appear to be the archetype of masculinity, nor am or at least a generalist societal archetype. I would argue I'm an archetype within my cultural background.
we were told one person noted that your neck wasn't wide enough, but I don't know how it could be any wider without you looking really weird.
They mean like a neck, like, that's all I can
Yeah,
imagine.
and triangle neck.
Worse.
Yeah, like, what's his face who does the morning routines and has the most kyphotic posture in the world. He makes me so worried.
The point I'm making here,
Uh-huh.
right, largely speaking,
Mhm.
is I am couching what I'm about to say in a, "This is Malcolm saying this,"
Mhm.
Malcolm, effeminate Malcolm who's never tried to overly represent a form of masculinity,
Sure, yeah.
and I thought to myself, "I never had this problem."
Mhm.
Then I searched my memory. I've dated a lot of girls, as I've mentioned before. I haven't mentioned in a long time on the podcast, so I probably should. Like, I've slept with over 100 women before I married Simone. Like, I really played the field for a long time, and it was wrong, and I'm not saying it's a good thing. I did it because I didn't have any other moral structure. Back then, I was just like, "Oh, what is status for men? Status is sleeping around, so I'm gonna sleep around," right? And then eventually got to a point where I was like, "This is stupid."
Well,
But the
it
point
was fun for you, right? I mean, you had fun.
I had fun, but more from a game perspective.
Oh,
Like,
like
I'm
winning
better than
winning
other
feels good
people. Look at
kind
what
of
I'm
thing.
winning. Yeah, winning feels good. I don't know if, like, sex is fine, but it's, like, not like, once you do it a lot with a lot of people, it's, like, not that, like it's like, okay, it's not like it gets worse. Like, some people are like, "Oh, again, no, it doesn't get worse." It's just you realize that you may have mythologized how good it is a bit. But the point here being or ignored the bad part, the smell, the shower afterwards, the grossness, etcetera.
Is this a stranger who you haven't vetted? You're kinda like, where have they been?
I guess they're hot,
What did
but
I just put
I
myself
always
in my
vetted everyone to an extent. It wasn't like I was sleeping with strangers. I wasn't, like, going to bars or something. Like, a good, like, quarter of the people I slept with were virgins when I slept with them, and I had enough experience to tell the difference. So it wasn't like I was going after sluts. I was going after, the nerds. Like, that was my specialty is nerds. But the point I'm making here is so I searched my memory. I'm like, "Okay, I never had a problem with this." And then I started to think, did I ever cry in front of a girl? Did I ever look for show emotional vulnerability to a girl?
Did
And
you?
then like past Malcolm responded to me in my head. Like I'm modeling past Malcolm, and past Malcolm's like, why would you do that? Girls are for sex. Like,
Oh, y w so did well, I guess I should have you ever cried in front of like, your brother or a friend? Like, who's a guy?
maybe when I was a little kid and I got like
That doesn't
triggered.
count, like, little no, like, not injury crying.
Yeah, but again, I'm couching all this, and I'm not saying I didn't even realize until I thought about it, that I had never gone out and cried in front of a girl. That I had never gone out and cried in front of a friend or something like that, that I had
Have you
never
wanted like, have you ever stopped yourself from crying in front
no,
of
I'll
me
cry
or
alone, but
you
it's
cried alone?
yeah, but it's never over, like, sadness.
Just, like,
Um,
frustration?
no, it's usually over, like, somebody else's suffering or something that I need to fix in the world or, the beauty of something.
Well, that's there's one form of crying that is manly, and I think it like, at least the older ones of us can all relate to it. There was this commercial, I think it was about trash, where there's a crying
That an
Indian.
Indian, yeah, and the
Yeah,
single tear
it
goes
was
down
this
the
man, yeah, and like, his face is the most stoic facial expression in the world, and a single tear falls down his cheek, and, like, that is the acceptable manly form. Like, that doesn't undermine your crying at all because it shows that, like, you're in complete control, but you feel so much that one tear is able to make
no.
control.
But also keep in mind, he is crying over, like when I said that, it's over, like, world problems.
Right,
And
which I guess also is manly, right? Because it shows that you are a leader, you are responsible for a larger
like
world.
George Bush crying when he's looking at the Katrina victims, I remember this.
Mhm.
The idea of, like, when is it appropriate to show vulnerability and emotion? And if
Yeah.
you're not as a man.
Yeah.
But the
Like,
wider point
personal
of
stuff, no. But, like, for the people that you lead or care about or represent, as long as you don't show too much, like, gesticulation.
but the point I'm trying to make here is this is me saying this, not trying to front how masculine I
Yeah.
am.
No, you've
Not
never tried to look
masculine.
masculine, you just
It
are
just
masculine.
never occurred to me why I would want to do this. And we're gonna talk about this in a second, but then also in our relationship, have I ever cried about anything? Did I cry when my mom died? Did I cry
No.
did I look
When your mom died, not only did you not cry, you proceeded to host a lunch, guests in New York City, and then a dinner party all the same day.
it was pre-planned. I couldn't cancel it, you know?
Most people would, and, like, people kept being like when they found out, 'cause we didn't tell them exactly right away, they were like, "Oh my god."
I mean, I remember you looked like you were close to crying that day, and I just felt like I had to calm you down because you were like, "Oh, this is so bad." And I was like, "Simone, our kids are safe, blah, blah, blah." And I talked you through it. And I remember like the only thing I was thinking about when you told me was like, "Oh, I've got to make sure Simone feels comfortable because clearly
Oh.
she's really distressed." But the larger point here being is even with this, even with me never really crying in our relationship, even with me never really, any of this, it was never, and I don't think it ever felt to you like I intentionally was trying not to show emotions to you. I've definitely sat you down and talked about concerns I have about our future. whether
Yeah.
it's financial
No, and there
concerns
are times where, yeah, you just feel super worried. But often, like, when you do so, you're sort of like, "Man, I'm, like, being, sort of overtaken by this," and, like, to the point of it not being logical that I need to talk through it.
but
Yeah.
the point I'm trying to make here is I feel like what's actually happening here is even for men who aren't very traditionally masculine, crying is just not a common thing to do as an adult, nor is seeking emotional validation. And I should note here that the form of crying that men get punished for is the type of crying that seeks emotional validation or that is meant to portray a specific self image.
I guess we have to think, like, why was crying evolved? I imagine it's to pull the heartstrings of a parent and a caregiver.
Well,
So
it's meant to tell mommy that you need resources, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so if you are doing this to an adult and some women continue this into adulthood, right? And I think the reason we see this behavior in some women in adulthood and not men is because for women it can be a way to signal their youth and thus the number of childbearing years they have left. They want to show men, actually I'm very young. Whereas a man doesn't need to signal that to women in the same way.
This is my real voice. And the whole sexy baby thing isn't an act. I'm a very sexy baby. I can't help it if men are attracted to me. Like that homeless guy. He likes what he sees.
Okay, that could be for me.
It's not. It's for her.
Well, and yeah, no, I really feel this, and this is why I feel pretty strongly about that theory because I really don't like crying. Like, I know a bunch of people who are really afraid of vomiting. Like, two of my best friends in college had like a deep fear of vomiting. Like, they would not eat out so that they would just never have a risk
Yeah.
of food poisoning. That level of fear, and I think I feel not that crazy, but like close to cry. I really hate crying. And I've learned that the best way to never cry is to know that when I am especially hormonally vulnerable, to isolate myself, which is why we do the whole thing where when I give birth and clearly I'm going through a lot of hormonal nonsense, you drop me off at the hospital, I deliver the baby, I like post C-section, I have to spend a couple of nights in the hospital. And then when I'm out, like, I'm okay, like I'm collected. But, like, it's really hard. Like, if and I don't cry almost at all unless, like, there's a nurse around asking me how I feel, because I know that the only times I cry are if there's an audience that's in, like, a kind of caregiving position that makes me feel somewhat vulnerable, and then, like, this signaling thing comes out where, like, because my body or mind knows it's in some form of distress, it's like, "Alright, do it," and I think many women maybe it makes sense that women who are more likely to be in very vulnerable positions, like, let's say you're in a roving clan or a tribe or something like that, and you're pregnant or you've just delivered, like, you actually are much more dependent, like, you still are in a slightly more childlike dependent state, even as an adult, because of that physical
Well, and
vulnerability.
it demonstrates use to an extent. You know, men
Yeah, yes, it's useful. Then, yeah, you're still crying, so you may not be a child, but you still need someone you need to pull someone's heartstrings so you don't die, because you can't otherwise keep up with everyone due to your pregnancy or due to being postpartum or something like that. So but I think that has to be it because there's such a strong correlation, at least for me, between crying and there being audience. And, like, if no one's around, I am so fine,
Well,
and
this
it's
might also be why I haven't felt an intuition to do it because I don't feel the same type of caregiver from you that I would feel from a mom, right? Like you are somebody who supports me, but ultimately depends on me, as are other women who I've dated.
Mhm.
Therefore, I wouldn't cry, right? Like, why would
Right,
I
it's like
do
not some unidirectional caregiver relationship.
Yeah, which makes it, make more sense within that context. And the point I was making earlier is that if you look at the ways where it's okay for a man to cry,
Yeah.
they are when it is not about self vulnerability.
Yeah, when
Um,
it's certainly not the signaling type of crying.
yes, it's you are crying for the sake of the world. In a way, it's about showing your responsibility
Yeah.
versus
Oh,
retrieving
yes.
responsibility.
Right, right, right. Because it's not
I
about you
feel
personally,
responsible
it's about
for
yeah.
people.
Like, you're only crying because you do make the thing you're crying about your personal responsibility, and that thing isn't you, it's beyond you. And this may also explain why women, when this does ultimately happen in the way where men are crying for personal reasons, so repulsive, because it implies to women that those men must think those women are the caregiver.
Yes.
And that is the number one, like, of the least sexy things a man can do to imply that the woman is the caregiver, to signal that in any way, explicitly or implicitly or through body language, and crying is probably a very clear form of that. Yeah. Oh, shoot.
Why did she develop the ick when I called her mommy and put my head in her lap and cried, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, maybe because you shouldn't have signaled to her that she's your mommy, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, it's also like, and this is exacerbated by there's this huge discussion online among women, because I can't tell you how many podcasts and YouTube episodes I've seen about this. Of one, the research shows that when in relationships, women take on more, like they do more work for taking care of their husbands.
and they do
Emotionally.
more
And they
for
do. And they do. So like already women are taking this on, and already now because of all this media, most women are aware of the fact that they're taking this burden on. And then if a husband turns around and is explicitly like, yeah, you're my mommy, like, or you're my caregiver, that like snaps them. They're like, that's it. Cause like at least they want to have this fantasy that like, well, when it comes down to it, though, my husband provides the money and the security. When it comes down to it, my husband's dominant. And if that falls apart, then like it's worth it. Oh,
So
of
the
course.
whole lark falls apart. Yeah.
Yeah. So like how are women the asshole then? Like at that point, right? That makes it seem a lot more.
They believe they want something they don't actually want. They're like, I want somebody I can be vulnerable in front of
Yeah.
because that's what they've been told by therapist culture.
Yeah.
And if you're, and ask guys to, think for themselves, like, do you actually? Like, do you actually want somebody who you can be vulnerable around? I mean, you can draw out the vulnerable side of you, like anyone could do that, but does that feel good? Does that feel natural? Or is
Yeah, and
this
does leaning into that help you in any way?
yeah, I think
I
part
don't
of the
like being
problem
vulnerable.
is
I
that
don't
men
think
are
it's
like,
good.
oh, this is unfair that I can't turn to them with my vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And what I would reflect back to me, and keep in mind there are cultural
Hey,
differences.
I will point out, women don't necessarily want to be vulnerable, and by choosing to not have kids and by choosing to not put themselves in vulnerable positions, women are signaling that in the modern age. Women don't want to be in this position. They don't want to be physically incapacitated by pregnancy or postpartum periods. Okay,
Yeah,
like,
that's sort of tangential to the point. The point I'm
anyway, yeah,
making here is that a lot of men, when they see these, they're like, how terrible is it that I can't go to anybody when I'm having emotional distress? And the way I would reframe this as, you frankly, like,
And Dad went to 7-Eleven to get scratchers. I guess he won because that was 6 years ago.
Which happens, dads leave, no need to be a pussy about it. Here's what I need.
God, but this is unfortunately, and I know our society doesn't tell you this, emotional control should really not be that hard as an adult male. Like, and I'm again, this is the simp Malcolm. This is effeminate Malcolm telling you, like, I never even considered that I was controlling these things about myself because I never thought about indulging in them, right? Like, I am not here saying I am extra masculine. I am saying that you are being primed to think that you need to do this thing that is actually not good for you at all. In the same way that we point out that, people are taught, oh, you need to let out anger. And yet we know that, like, if you punch a wall, it actually makes you angrier.
yeah.
Like,
It's not
don't
gonna help.
pop psychologist stuff like indulge in an emotion for a short period to release it. No, indulging for an emotion in a short period makes it louder. It doesn't release it. That's not, no.
Yeah.
Redirecting your attention and recontextualizing what's happening to you is how you lower an emotion, not indulging in it. And this is one of these like pop psychology things or, oh, real men cry. Who the made that up? I'll tell you what, it wasn't a man who said that, right? Like,
Yeah.
it was some weird group that was trying to psyop men into making themselves look like wusses in front of their partners, right? That's basically
Yeah.
the way I see it, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's group that is like, well, if men acted more like women, and again, the women do not realize that this is not what they want.
No, I mean, well, yeah, and the women also, like these are the same people who are brainwashed into codependent relationships with their therapists. I mean, they've
Yeah,
got a lot of problems going on.
they've got a lot of problems going on, but I mean, to start with for you guys is just, I mean, I think that this is a part of the problem. Like, this is not something that you are like, you need to resist or something. Like, I'd make an example here. If I decided that like I wasn't going to masturbate, like that would be an enormous challenge for me. I would be like, oh,
Are you glad I'm not one of those wives who are like, you're not allowed
I've
to
seen
do this?"
so much of it online recently.
Yes,
I mean,
this
even the
is
head of
crazy.
PragerU was pro masturbation.
Good for him.
Apparently he went on some like Catholic show and he goes, well, it doesn't cause me problems in this marriage, and it didn't in my last 3 either. Man,
Okay.
that was hilarious.
Maybe not the best argument I've
I
heard on
think
that
that's more of
front.
a boomer problem than the point being is like that would create like I'm not the person coming here and saying I have total self-mastery, right? Like
Mhm.
clearly I don't have self-mastery around something like masturbation.
Thanks for telling the world, Malcolm.
No, but what I'm saying is, and with the reason I'm contrasting this
Yeah.
is I don't want people to think that I'm coming out here being like I'm the most masculine, disciplined man who's
yeah.
ever existed.
Yeah.
And that's why I never feel like crying or seeking emotional
Well,
support.
and as we have revealed in other podcast episodes, kind of watch out for the ones who frame themselves as super masculine, and often it comes out that,
Or super caring of women.
they're usually hiding something.
Basically, I'm starting the fatherhood chapter of my life. We're not pregnant just yet, but we've moved to the Scottish Highlands. The reason why me and my ex split up is I told her to sit down and to write down like her goals. And I wrote, you know what? I want to move to like a big city. You will not find this kind of woman who will fit with this lifestyle in a big major city. Why? The women who are in the big cities are their glorified Instagram prostitution. I actually want to have a few like sleepless nights. I want to have a few like sleep deprived nights where I stay up late. Bro, for the last few years, I've went to sleep at 7, 8 p.m. You couldn't imagine the amount of like parties and social events and dinners that I've missed. I know what goes on in these parties. And the issue was that the girls that I was meeting from these places, just like I was as well, were all low quality. It's a low quality place to be. I wanted to be super social. I wanted to have some late nights where we stay up and we're social and there's a party that we go to and everything. But she saw it, and I'm not going to lie, like I could see how like offended she was, where she was quite like pressuring. She was like, wait, you want to do this? Oh, you want to do that? You want to stay up late, but that's unhealthy. Those party girls, like the party, low quality, degenerate TikTok type of girls, they are attracted to the party, low quality, degenerate TikTok type of guys. Fine, like trash can stay with trash. Because for hers, she wrote that she wanted to do more of the things that we were currently doing. It's wholesome, and you know that she's an awesome girl for that. She doesn't want to be around like like party girls and whatever. I just realized like we're actually going into 2 separate seasons right now. Fine, like trash can stay with trash. This is going to sound weird. You need to be hit in the face. I will repeat that again. As a young man, you need to be hit in the face consistently.
Yeah, but the point I'm making here, okay, is I am not that. I am not trying to signal that. I am not here saying I never really feel like crying in front of my wife because I'm tough. I'm just like, if you do not allow society to brainwash you around this stuff, it's going to be like a complete non-issue for you. It's going to be like, oh, why would I even think about doing that, right? Unless you are born with some sort of unusual biology. And here what I mean is obviously people are born with different biologies. Some men are born perceiving the world more like women. Some men are born, more cryy than other people. Some men
What about
are
men who go on estrogen? Really?
Probably a lot. Yeah, and culturally, there might be differences. There might be some cultural groups, but I just might be from a cultural group where men almost never cry, and it's just not even something we would consider.
Yeah, Scots Irish doesn't strike me as a cry friendly.
Well, the funny thing is I remember my parents growing up, they were very bought into the urban monoculture. They were very like, oh, you should cry when you need to cry. You should.
Really?
They were never
Like,
like,
it seemed like your parents.
well, they were like, well, we may not do it, but like, don't. And my dad also not a particularly masculine guy. I've never seen him cry.
Well, yeah, actually, he's a lot like you. Like, he never tries to front masculinity, but he, like, saved that entire ship full of people in a giant storm and stuff.
Yeah, that's actually pretty cool. He won the Coast Guard medal and an American like medal of something.
He's one of the first people to do a Class 5 rapid in South America on the BOBO.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot of crazy things.
But he doesn't front, and he doesn't come off as like, yeah.
You wouldn't know he pulled like a Kennedy, like going out in a storm and saving everyone on a boat or
Yeah, and
something.
you wouldn't know he like, yeah.
You need to talk him through this, and he's like, "Oh yeah, that one time I saved the boat in the middle of the storm."
Yeah.
And you hear these stories, but they're not like a big part of how he contextualizes himself.
Not
Actually,
no, it's like this is the stuff I learned like 7 years into our relationship.
he really, and it's not that he doesn't try to, he really tries hard to frame himself as like the
No,
erudite.
erudite and yes, and that he
Everything will be about, oh, how I did X and I went and saw X. And,
yeah, so it's not like he doesn't front. He fronts, just not
he fronts. He just never
in
considers
his natural
about
masculinity.
being masculine, even though he's
Mhm.
done a bunch of like big masculine things for other people.
Yeah.
And that is interesting as well, that people and people like him can be desperate to be seen a certain way.
Yeah.
And he is like hungrily desperate in a way that comes across as not positive. But he doesn't need to
If you're
lean-
watching this, Michael, we love you.
He's not watching it. He watches like one of our episodes every month.
Okay.
Too much effort.
Sorry.
But the point I'm making is, and he knows it, I tell him this. I've told him it's really the kid. I was like, bro, like, stop trying to get people to see you this way. Like, it's not like positive. But a lot of people from his generation just have this drive to be seen in a certain way.
Yeah. When in every generate, come on.
But the reason why this is relevant to this conversation is, despite this drive to be seen not as masculine, but like it's this erudite intellectual, which
Mhm.
within his generation would have been an incredibly emotionally sensitive position, he's never really indulged in that around me. And I think it's because of a lack of a biological drive to.
Mhm.
Not because he's masculine or because he wants to seem masculine. He just never felt that impulse. And I think that you were right at the beginning of this. That impulse, when guys do that for their girlfriends and they show this vulnerability, it's mostly contrived.
Mhm.
It's not an emotion they're really feeling. It's an emotion that they cultivated to signal something to their partner that they think their partner wants to see in them, or some iteration of like, well, real men cry. I'm a real man, therefore I'm gonna cry, right? I'm so masculine, I can show my vulnerabilities. When I just don't think that, and this is, I guess, also what I mean is psychological framing. And just in our society, we're not really told how to be masculine or anything like that. It's like a version of feminine. I guess I'd say like my intuition around vulnerability is it's just not something I would indulge in. Like if I am focused on my vulnerability, like maybe my family's financial insecurity, we don't have a job right now that's bringing in money. Sign up for the Patreon.
Huge thanks to everyone who has chosen
Yeah,
to
it's
support
really
us.
cool.
Like, for cool.
But we don't, there's a lot of things that I could be worried about. But like, if I come to you like crying about that or acting emotionally vulnerable about that, I am doing nothing to achieve the security that my family requires. Right. Like and my family does require it, and I am responsible for it. So if I go to you and I'm in this state of like emotional indulgence, you're going to look at me and be like, okay, well, now we're really screwed because now I need to find out how to handle the family financially.
Well, you're not in this by yourself, friend.
I know I'm not in this by myself, but I don't abdicate all responsibility for you to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like to
No,
make me feel like it was all on me would be terrible.
Yeah, and I think if I came to you crying about it, you would feel that way. You'd have to say like,
Oh yeah. I'd be like, well, I guess I have to figure this
I
out by
promise you
myself.
we'll get through this.
Yeah.
Why would that not make somebody leave you, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But if I went to you, would you feel the same way if I
No.
did that to you?
Because it is my responsibility. And I think every man wants it to be their responsibility. No man wants to be in a relationship where their partner doesn't feel safe coming to them and being like, hey, because keep in mind, at the end of the day, the decisions in where we are is downstream of my leadership and my decisions. So when my partner comes to me and they're like, hey, I'm really concerned about like this direction we're heading and everything like that. And I feel a lot of vulnerability. And am I safe? It's a bit like a crew coming to the captain and saying this. There's a big difference between the crew coming to the captain and saying like,
I'm the captain coming to the crew.
better. Like,
Mhm.
I don't know if we're going to hit land. I don't know if we're going to have enough food until we hit land. I don't know if we have enough, to like the captain coming down to the crew and being like, I don't know if we have enough. I don't know where land. We are out of line. You all are going to get scurvy and die horribly. And that's a very different scenario.
Yeah.
And it's because, and these guys, they want to take on this captain role. They do. So most of them do, I think, right? And most of their partners want them to take it on. And they haven't really thought through what it means for the captain to go to the crew, be like, guys, for a captain to go to the crew and be like,
Ooh.
hey, I'm looking
Actually,
at the
though, what if this is a generational thing? What if younger people, because we've seen just almost logarithmic levels of infantilization, what if younger men actually want a mommy? And the problem is that this is happening with younger
maybe some
people.
do, but I mean, the point I was making here is the captain going to the crew and being like, "Hey, food is scarce. I've done the math. I don't know if we're gonna make it to shore on time. So, this seems like the best course we could take to get there." That's what I'm like when I come to you as vulnerability.
Uh,
Me coming to the crew and being like, "I just don't know. Like, I I I didn't mean for you guys to all not have enough food. I just was trying my best." That's not something the crew wants to hear.
no,
And you've taken on this role of captain of other people's lives. And, maybe that's part of, like you're saying there, is that a lot of young men do not want to take on the role of captain of their local, partnership or whatever.
yeah, yeah. That could be another thing going on. So theory one, this is women asking for men to show signals that men aren't even they never needed to show, that they're not comfortable showing, and then when they try to either fake it or kinda make it happen naturally, everything falls apart because intuitively, this is just a huge alarm bell for women on an instinctual, deep, evolved level. But then the other thing could just be, yeah, that more men really don't want to be leaders or captains, and women are not here for that, which could also explain why there's even more content now about I don't know, there's some name that women are using for this, like being like the mom to their like having a man child or something, being the mom to their partner, like doing
Yeah.
everything for him and feeling like, great, now I just have to take care of two people instead of one.
I think part of this is the way women contextualize things. You could contextualize yourself as being like my mom. You do the cleanup often. You cook me food.
Often your laundry, I do all the dishes, I do the
Yeah,
cooking,
are you not
clean the
like, if
house.
you wanted to see yourself as my mom, you could.
Well, I guess, like, I still think that's fairly normative for women. I think where the difference is and where it's too far for women is where the men don't also then in turn be like, "Well, and the buck stops with me when it comes to income, financial stability, etcetera," like leadership.
Yeah, like our future.
Mhm.
Yeah, okay.
And I think the problem is that many of the women who complain about this really aren't in that position. And this shows up even in pop culture. Like, obviously, a lot of people have been commenting on the relationships in the Secret Lives of Mormon Lives, which I think had like another season come out or something. And like one of them, is trying to be sort of this, tradish, not really, but like, Mormon influencer. But like, I think while her husband was going through medical school, she was paying all the bills and everything, but he was still trying to be like, well, I'm calling the shots. And that like, I think we're just seeing too many examples of that in media
Well,
where
okay, like, that's not a bad thing. People used to do this. The wife would
oh, yeah,
work.
take turns with school and everything, but, like, the relationship does become unstable if the woman is doing like, if she's pregnant, having kids, bringing in all the income, maybe cooking and cleaning as well, like,
Well,
that
that's
gets
a
rough.
normal Korean or Japanese relationship. This is why women don't wanna get
This is
married.
why there's a failure to thrive over there. They're not having kids.
The men are like, "You're gonna do what I tell you to, and you're gonna." No, because they don't have a structure for this, and this is why I think building a structure for what in masculinity looks like, why it's important to have these conversations as sort of like you can do a lot of things. You even bring in, the majority of our income, I'd argue, and provide more in terms of economic stability than I do.
No, that
Uh,
wouldn't come were it not for the systems that you set up.
right, but
Like,
it's
our dynamic is you do the thinking and I make it happen, but, like, the making it happen part means nothing when there's nothing for me to make
well,
happen.
I'd argue that you'd be financially stable if I'd never met you.
I would be,
Um,
absolutely, but, like, that and again, that's why many women remain single.
No, but the point here being is that, you do not follow me because of, and this is one of the problems that you see in Korea and Japan style masculinity, The woman does everything, the woman makes the money, and then the man bosses her around, right?
Yeah, I feel like not doing this.
And then the man shoulders the burden of the family and the future and does what
Right.
he can to try to protect the wife, emotionally speaking, which is, I'm sure, at least to an extent, how you feel within this family.
Oh, totally.
And I do a degree of childcare in terms of the old.
A degree. That's
Well, I mean,
something.
I don't think
Who took the kids to the birthday party this weekend? Who spent every lion's share of the day with them, playing with them?
Yeah, but they're, really good kids. But I already see it in the boys, they don't really, like, the older ones don't cry as much anymore. Like, men stop crying, I think, at a fairly young age. And we as a society somehow contextualize that as bad. And it's not bad, it's normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a man not crying, and I think that this is also a really important stereotype to break, and not being emotionally vulnerable is not the man being a steel wall or being your typical overly stern, whatever. Like, you guys know me. You see, I am not overly stern or lacking in emotion or lacking in emotional expression or, somebody who's deeply trying to control everything. Well, I guess I do have a large degree of emotional control that I believe I have a duty for, but I'm not, the stereotype of the rigid, thin-lipped, whatever, right?
You're not the classic maintain frame Fred Pillar, we'll say.
Yeah.
I do think it's interesting that, well, one, it's important to recognize that men and women express and process emotions differently and also have very different hormonal profiles, which really affects emotional output. But two, you pointed out, and I think this is true, that like across cultures and like probably based on your genetic inheritance, you are going to have different ways of processing emotion. And I wonder which cultures involve men crying the most. Chime in the content or comments if you have an idea there.
Yeah, I'd be interested to know.
What would you guess?
I'm gonna guess like Muslim cultures, the cultures where you have strict hierarchy between individuals.
Well, and also where men and women are more isolated from each other. So I feel like in such environments, you wouldn't need to as ardently evolve that emotional maturity because like men aren't crying in front of women, they're crying in front of men
Yeah.
theoretically because they're in men's spaces.
And another thing I note about myself that people may be getting wrong here is I am not a particularly tough guy. I am, when I get hurt, or I am definitely have less endurance than you have.
Well, what's your percentile for pain tolerance is like
0%.
0%, and I'm in the 99th percent.
I should clarify here that we're speaking off of full genome sequences. I am in the 99th percentile in terms of pain sensitivity, and Simone is in the bottom 1 percentile in terms of pain sensitivity.
So yeah, I mean, again, I think that goes to show that your genetic inheritance is going to affect how you process emotion,
but
pain,
again,
et
the
cetera.
point I'm making here is this isn't either me being like I'm super good at like stealing myself against pain or
Yeah,
anything.
you're not saying anything. Yeah, you're not like, look at me, I'm super masculine.
I'm a complete wuss when it comes to pain. I don't want pain. I don't like pain. But pain is not good. Get it away. I'm not gonna subject myself to pain for no reason.
Yeah, no.
To show how tough I am. The guy who puts the cigarette out in his hand or something. I'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, what the?
Yeah, but I think people who do that for real just don't feel it the way you would feel it.
Yeah.
I think pain tolerance isn't about ability to emotionally process pain. I think it's literally about what you're able to feel. Period.
Anyway, love you to death, Simone. Interesting episode, I think.
Alan?
It's not talked about is what does masculinity mean in our society and what's normative for masculinity. And I think I'm a great person to show this because I'm talking about my own internal subjective experience, which I think is slightly more insulated from urban monoculture than other people's just due to my natural arrogance. And this can give you an idea of even what an effeminate guy's insulated experience around emotional vulnerability is.
Yeah, and I came away with a better understanding, or at least a hypothesis as to why women are so instantly disgusted and turned off by men expressing personal vulnerability.
Well, would you be turned off if you saw me like come to you emotionally vulnerable? Like, and try to model yourself. How would you feel about that?
Depends on what it would be about. Like sometimes people just like if you were injured, you were crying. I'd get it, man. But yeah, I think it depends on what the implications are for me and our family's safety, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. And I think that's where a lot of people.
Do you remember how much about pussy I was about getting the blood drawn thing? I feel
Oh,
like all about around me to push the
you
thing and
weren't.
take all
But
my
remember
blood.
how, like, whenever you get a shot, if I'm there, I just bite your other shoulder and it works really well.
You're cute.
So I think it's a lot of it's just an ick thing for you with needles, not necessarily about the pain, because I'm inflicting more pain on you by
True. But
biting your.
I don't like yeah, but I'm just like not that masculine around this stuff. That's why I think it's really interesting to use myself as the metric here.
Yeah. Yes. 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 Well, and I learned not too long ago that the concept of toxic masculinity was to describe actually reactionism against sort of anti-male bias. So sort of men acting out against society not allowing them to just be normal men. So it wasn't just like, oh, natural masculinity is toxic. It was more like almost performative reactive masculine
Which I
signaling.
think is what a lot of toxic masculinity really is.
Yeah,
Is that
performative signaling that's not actually masculine.
being overly tough or cruel to a woman instead of the woman's protector.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. And I think yeah, I that kind of blew my mind. I was like, "Oh crap." So like it's not natural masculinity, it's contrived masculinity in response to society going too far with feminization. And that yeah, thought that was super fascinating. So,
Love you to death, Simone.
love you too, gorgeous. It was fun. Thank you. Well, I was just looking at the anime images from our premium Patreon with the.
Oh, me too. I love those for the stories.
They're so cute. It makes me wish that there was a manga that I could read.
Just, for Substack, we're also going to be releasing these, but we're releasing them on weekends on Substack, or is they're all already released on Patreon? What Simone is referring to here is we have 4 stories up now that I created partially playing through AIs to, explore various types of izakaya worlds. And I find them to be very entertaining. They're in audiobook form, and she created title cards for them. It was just, we don't want to flood you if you're a Substack person with like 5
know,
different
right.
stories all in one weekend.
Yeah.
So the idea is that we give them to you slowly, whereas for Patreon, it just makes sense to bundle the upload. This is not a Substack.
I like
Patreon.
fantasy fiction audiobooks that you're making available. We listen, or at least I listened to a bunch of them when we took a family vacation. It was so fun. It was so
Yeah,
fun.
we've got 4 now, 4 books that you can listen to if you want to.
Well, that's in addition to all the pragmatist guides being free to paid subscribers. So I guess not technically free, but all the audiobooks and ebooks, you can just immediately download them if you are a paid subscriber. Plus our albums, I separated out just the general like Glitch Hop album that's available for everyone, like paid or not, as a fun thing to download. But also then the premium Basecamp songs, I separated out from the Future Day songs. So we just have a separate Future Day Techno Puritan album, which I want to add to. Some of them are so cute. I mean, they're all cute, but like, I really like the one that's like country style. Hey kids,
Is this about Future Day?
yeah.
Let's promise to make a brighter place for every heart in this human race. Our visions of tomorrow shine so bright. Together we can make it right. Science, magic, take the flight. Imagination is our guiding light.
It's
That's hilarious. So the RFAB project, the reality fabricator, like AI storyteller,
yeah.
we're like, I basically was like, we need to the team. The UI is not up to snuff. It is very unstable. It is very difficult to use. And so, I got to this first point where I'm like, we need to see if we need to remake this. And so what they're going to do is they're going to do 2 things. The team is going to take this and try to make the existing system downloadable to see if that fixes the issue,
That's
and make
cool.
it text first to see if that fixes the issue. And then Bruno's going to try to create a web first version of this
Nice.
to see if that fixes the issue. And then I'm going to test the app against the web first and see which does better. And my intuition is that the web first is going to do better. And the reason we did the app to begin with is so we could sell it on Steam. But I don't know if it was ever really that good for the Steam community to begin with. given that it's written based and that a lot of the visuals were sort of shoehorned in for investors and stuff.
Yeah.
And that we should really focus on just creating really good immersive storytellers and world explorers that are text first. And then all of the other stuff can come after that.
I'm with you on that. That checks out for me. I like that.
Yeah. You like, it's fun indeed.
President.
That would be so